I'm Mike Hanwald, field agronomist with Vex Hybrids, and I'm joined here today with Jared Chester. He's our PFR location lead here at our Practical Farm Research site in London, Ohio. And we're in the PFR shop here today taking a look at a planter and talking through some things to think about as you get the planter out of the shed and get ready to head to the field. You know, as we wrapped up planting season last spring, we probably all had a mental checklist in our head of things that we wanted to do and updates and changes we wanted to make to the planter. But we thought that, as almost a whole year has passed, it'd be a good idea to review a few of these things and just kind of have this as top of mind as we still have a little bit of time here yet before we head to the field to start planting. So we'll go ahead and just kind of walk through the row unit here, and want to start with the row cleaners. Obviously, as you look at these, you want to make sure that you don't have any worn out bearings or excessive wear on the unit. But biggest thing is when you head to the field with this, keeping these set and adjusted correctly so that they're just moving trash out of the way and not actually moving any soil. You don't want these creating a furrow that then our row unit's going to ride in and disrupt our seed placement. So having those set correctly is pretty important. Jared, do you want to talk about the disc openers?
Yeah, so just talking, there's a lot of different things we look at when we bring the planters in the shop, but Mike and I just wanted to hit on a few that we see commonly, just things that maybe could be improved on a lot of planters. And the one I wanted to kind of challenge you guys with was your disc openers and seed tubes. So disc openers, first off, make sure, do we need to replace them? And if we're getting close, let's just go ahead and get them replaced because, you know, they're affecting basically every seed in every trench of that field. So the best way to do it is pull one off, get a good measurement, know your tolerances, and if you're getting close, let's just go ahead and get them switched out. From there, if we're in tolerance in terms of we got enough life left in them, what we need to do is make sure they're adjusted correctly. So to do that, we use 2 business cards. We pull them in till they touch or can't go any farther, and on this white planter, we want about 1.5 inches between those business cards. Another common thing that we do when we're actually looking at our disc openers and going through the planters and evaluating, especially if we need to change disc openers, a lot of times we see other problems that have formed already, and we see them in the seed tube. So you can see basically we had disc openers get too narrow on us, and the seed tube guard actually was rubbed down too far, and what happened was those disc openers actually rubbed a spot on that seed tube guard, and you can see we've got a slight dog ear, so every seed that rolls down that seed tube, it could potentially knock that seed around and affect our placement. So those are a couple things that we pay close attention to every year on the row unit.
All right, as we move back further in the row unit, we move into planting depth and our depth settings here. You want to make sure that these gauge wheel arms are tight, that there's not a lot of play there, because that's what sets your planting depth, which is very important to keep that accurate and precise. So our PFR proven planting depths in corn is at about 2 inches, and in soybeans it's 1.5 inches, and we've got multiple years of testing to back up those planting depths.
Mike, another thing we do every year after we get the planter redone in terms of regarding to depth is trying to get the planter set uniform row to row in depth. And what we do to actually get that achieved is we set the planter on the ground in the shop here on the concrete, so it basically sets or rests on its disc openers, and we take boards. These are for our corn planter actually, because we plant corn, try and plant corn 2 inches deep. So these are actually a 2x4 and a piece of plywood screwed to it. And what we do is we just shove these under both gauge wheels on the row unit, and we set every row the same. So that way when we go out to the field, we know the planter as a whole is set uniformly. So then it's a lot easier in terms of digging different rows and trying to make that judgment. Do I need to go up? Do I need to go down? So the whole planter is set uniformly, and we can just set the planter all the same when we get out there in the field.
One important thing is, I know we all know that it's important to check our planting depth as we go from one field to another, and as we move into different soil types in the field. But as we move into a new field, if we were previously planting at the correct depth, but now in another field, maybe our planting conditions have changed and our depth isn't where we want it to be. Before we start adjusting our depth handle, it's important to evaluate, do we have our down pressure set correctly? And so on this planter, there's a spring setting that you can adjust your down pressure. You may have a hydraulic or an airbag system for adjusting that down pressure, but it's important to make sure that is set set correctly, because more than likely, if our depth has changed, it's not because of the distance between the gauge wheels and our disc openers has changed. It's because of the fact that the soil conditions have changed and we either require more or less downforce to get that seed into the ground. Last thing as we move to the back of the row unit here are our closing wheels, and it's important with these closing wheels to remember that they are closing wheels, not necessarily packing or firming wheels. Our seed firmer is doing most of the work as far as giving us good seed to soil contact and keeping that seed in place firm in the trench. So the closing wheels simply need to pull in enough soil and provide just enough firming action to finish off that good quality seed to soil contact. And so we want to make sure our tension is set in as light of a possible setting to provide that good closing action without putting too much pressure on the seed. All right, switching over to the corn planter here, just wanted to point something out because the bean planter we were just looking at didn't have a starter fertilizer system on it. On this planter we're using Precision Plantings Conceal system, so you can see it's actually integrated into the gauge wheel here with a knife that runs there to inject that starter fertilizer into the ground. So that would be what we would call a 2x2x2 system. Now, not all our systems are exactly 2 inches over and 2 inches down. It's going to differ from one system to another. I think, Jared, we're running about 3¼ inches here away from the seed. But I just wanted to point out the importance of taking some time to check and make sure that starter fertilizer truly is at least 2 inches away from the center of your seed trench. And that comes down to the salt content that's in that starter fertilizer. If you're using 28% or 1034O or some type of sulfur product, it's going to contain some salt content, and if we get that too close to the seed, we can actually potentially end up and injure the young seedling or injure the roots. And so we want to avoid that from happening. So just take the time to check and make sure that those units for that 2x2 fertilizer haven't shifted over time, and they're a minimum of at least 2 inches away from the seed.
Good, Mike. The only thing I wanted to share with everybody here before we wrap up the video is on the website we do actually have kind of a planner checklist to help you guys make sure you hit all the different topics before you get to the field this spring. So not only does it kind of walk through the topics we cover, but also all the other aspects of the planner, from bar height to making sure your monitor's updated, all those small tweaks that can really make a difference in terms of having success in an efficient spring. So.
All right, well, thanks a lot, Jared, and appreciate you watching the video here, and we wish you the best of luck as you prepare for a safe and successful planting season.